You may recognize the name of the author of the next book. His name is Imre Kertesz. Um, I apologize, I don't know Hungarian, so I don't know where the emphases go in there, or if that's even close to right. But perhaps I should know because he won the 2002 Nobel Prize in Literature. And this is his book that I want to talk about right now. It's called Fateless. If any novel would have the ability to impress with its insights into the human condition, you would think it would be one about a teenage boy named Georgie, trying to survive as he's torn away from his family one day and then randomly shuffled from one concentration camp to the next. Add this to a narrator whose first-person documentarian-style prose discusses everything from his father being transferred to a labor camp to, at the very end of the novel, his blasé reaction to his father's death in the camps. Thinking back on it, this was one of the central problems for me when it came to this book. His reactions, even to the most horrific experiences, like finding out that there were crematoria in the camps, it struck me as aloof and cool, and because of that, unconvincing. In one of the very last sentences of this book, Fateless, Georgie, the main character, says this: "Everybody will ask me about the deprivations, the terror of the camps, but for me, the happiness there will always be the most memorable." Let me start over. I'm sorry. Everybody will ask me about the deprivations, the terror of the camps, but for me, the happiness there will always be the most memorable experience, perhaps. Yes, that's what I will tell them the next time they ask me about the happiness in those camps. End quote. And I wonder what survivors today would really say about those words. I don't deny that some might find it interesting, sort of an interesting psychological technique to convince yourself retrospectively or retroactively that you were actually happy and content in the camps, and what psychologically that it might be sort of like a coping mechanism. I don't know. But I would be curious to find out about what the average Holocaust survivor, if there is such a thing, would think about something like that. What I find most disconcerting about this is not that he could have found happiness in the camps. We're all sort of forced to find our own ways to survive psychologically, after all. But nothing in the book leading up to that sentence would have led the reader to believe that it was true. And that's the real problem for me, I guess. As a result, the whole thing ended up feeling false, more like a series of diary entries than a coherent, lucid account of concentration camp life. I use the term diary entries here because while so many people claim that this is biographical or semi-biographical in nature, Kertesz has purportedly denied that this is true. They're saying this because apparently he did spend some time as a very young man in the concentration camps. But I should make some important notes. I didn't read the novel in Hungarian, and I may have been in a particularly non-receptive mood while reading it, etc., etc. I'm always very suspicious of my own reception of a novel when I don't like it. Another reviewer wrote this: "In the end, I remained as detached and unengaged as Georgie himself." I think that's a quote from someone on Goodreads, maybe. And I kind of agree with that quote. I mean, and because of that, I'm afraid it won't stick with me the same way, say, that a work like Primo Levi's The Periodic Table, another work about this same time period has stuck with me, and memorably so. I was glad that this wasn't as so much, I hate to use the adjective popular Holocaust fiction is, sort of simplistic story about good triumphing over evil, like which you get a lot in Elie Wiesel and stuff like that. There's a reason why he didn't win a prize in literature. He won a Peace Prize. It's because he's not the greatest of writers. Kertesz never turns the events in the camps into some sort of gratuitous pornography of atrocity after atrocity, leaving us to sort of sanctimoniously shake our heads in disapproval and let ourselves, pat ourselves on the shoulder for having something to do with, putting the camps to an end. How true is it? In some ways, I hope I'll never find out how true it is. It's horrifying to even think about, let alone experience. But I have to say this, as much as I can't say I really loved the novel, I thought that the sincerity of his literary effort and his vision aren't really something I can call into question, considering what he's experienced in his life. Fateless by Imre Kertesz.